Hi there, I'm Johan Skoglöf. Me and my colleague Marcus will see you on Monday on the workshop, and we're going to help Hannah a little bit to build the learning portals. My background is I'm a learning consultant, been working with a lot of Swedish companies and building learning portals and implementing learning management and helping learning organization in general. So I made a presentation in Swedish, and now I make a quick translation to the English version. So the first question is, why do we need learning portals? With many companies, I used to put this question: how do you get the knowledge you needed in work? And then we put it in service to the employees in the companies. And the answers are always like a smaller part, like 10 to 15%, comes from the formal learning, and most of the learning actually comes from asking colleagues or experts, the social learning, or actually searching the intranet or internet, or looking in technical documentation and so on. So if you need to support learning really, what you need in work, you need to address the social and in the formal part as well. But by doing this, you also add some complexity. We have done a lot of research about how much time you spend in a normal week to find the information, knowledge you need in your work. And this is from Burson Deloitte, and it's my experience as well. Around 1 out of 5 days, like 20%, is spent on really searching for knowledge and other parts. So that's a big part. And another thing to reflect on is when you look at content you have in your course catalog, only a little part, sorry for the marking here, like 15 to 20% is relevant for your job. So there's a work of finding and providing end users with what is relevant for them in the work, and that's a large work actually. So that's one reason why you need learning portals. You need to help them curate and find that information. And here's another problem to think about. You know, probably the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, which means that you forget after 2 days, you forget 70% of what you learned on a course, on an event. And the problem is that you probably apply this not the hours afterwards, but maybe weeks or months afterwards, which means you have forgotten the things you learned, and you need to apply on a much higher complexity level than you did in the course. So the problem is that we need to move learning from a formal event to something that is embedded in work, or at least always available. You normally talk about adding small nudgets of learning that you can take just before you make your performance, you make your task, like micro learning, or something that helps you doing your tasks, like performance support, or actually we need to support and embed learning in the flow of work. So that's a few problem areas that we need to address, and that learning portals help you to address. And I'm gonna give you an example of this. This example is from Ericsson, and they actually had a learning management system, and they had a lot of formal training, a lot of e-learning and other things. Still, they saw a lot of problems when trying to implement new generation of mobile technology, like 4G, for example, because it took too long time. And also most of the resources that early adopters actually used, sales and service personnel, was more like resources like videos and documents and tips and tricks and other things, rather than formal training that took too long time. So we helped Ericsson in that case to add a learning portal on top of the learning management system, because we needed to add much more than the formal training. But today these learning portals looks like this. This is for the cloud technology and that academy. And so you have also formal tracks. So a learning portal can help you digest and find a learning tracks for your job, so you can be very relevant for your specific job. And that's one of the part of a learning portal, to filter out in a lot of different dimension. It could be a job, it could be your prerequisite knowledge, or how advanced learning you want. But in this case, we're going to look at my job training. So, and that could be, of course, different blended resources, anything that we draft out of the learning management system. It could be e-learning, it could be actually that we have a registration on a formal class or on the job training, or it could be webinar sessions or recorded webinar sessions or anything that is formal. But on top of that, you will probably need above this formal training to access a lot of resources that you need to perform your job, like just maybe a rehearsal or instruction on how to do something, like a video or a stepwise presentation, or maybe a document or an expert webinar that was recorded on this topic. So these learning portals has a lot of parts where you can search, and it's organized to easily find the things you need when you're going to perform your work. And then after work or at work, you probably need to solve problems together with your colleagues. And at the beginning, these were like text-based forums. And so you could share knowledge, you could together discuss things on how you did solve an installation problem or anything. But right now they are also complemented by video channels like YouTube channels. So you have a channel for cloud technology like this, and it's a two-part actually. One is short nuggets pushed out from the academy, and the other part is employees that are experts or normally employees that can add things, experiences. And of course these are rated and they are commented, and you can filter out the top list and so on to see. And it's not only videos like video parts, it's also a Jammer activity stream. So there's a channel for cloud technology in Jammer, for example, that helps people. So to summarize what I said is that you add on the formal learning, you add informal parts like resources, and you add social learning, collaboration on top of that. So here's a very old picture. It's from Burson Deloitte. It's probably 10 years old, sorry. But it shows a little bit a learning portal. That's my personal portal to experiences, like from other persons, knowledge and information that I need for my job. So it's not only to the learning management system, it could be to other social places or document or directly to other persons, but it's digested or curated to be relevant just for me. And here's a normal modern, if you have heard about the concept of learning experience platforms, that's another way to look at it. Today there are a lot of learning experience platforms called Degreed or Edcast or Pathgather, and they also draw from all the flows of knowledge that are in online course libraries or in blogs or TED Talks or whatever. So it's the same function, but it works a little bit differently. So I'm not going to go into that right now, but just to show you that the concept lives in other forms as well. So what is happening now is this picture then, that what we are also doing right now is that we're also addressing the informal part and the social part. So let's move on. I'm going to go in a little bit on the structure of a learning portal. I mean, of course, they could look differently, but and that depends on the design and what kind of tool you use. This is an example from SharePoint, and that Marcus has built, who is in the workshop. And at Ericsson, there are hundreds of learning portals, or a bit above 100 maybe. And they have some common parts, and they of course have connection to the video channels and to the social part. I'm not going to talk about that right now. I'm going to talk a little bit about this part that you can actually link to a lot of other sources, and you can filter that for different purposes. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the structure in it. It's a little bit more technical. So because you could see that behind this scene, the front end, we can organize. We can have a page that shows every resource you have from A to Z, or it could be based on your experience level, or it's based on your job area. So that's kind of a different approaches of navigating the content. And then you can have lists of different kinds that shows you something that is filtered for my job. For example, this is a person working with service delivery. So these courses or resources are filtered for that person. You can also see that it's filtered for, or it's grouped by level from basic to advanced. And then you can see there's a short explanation and timing, and you can click on the different kind of video or a PowerPoint, or it's a webcast, and you then access the content. So this is the main thing in a learning portal, where you filter things. I'm just going to show a little about that. So a structure would look like this. You have a lot of portal pages that are addressing different users and different user needs of the content. And on these pages, you filter out relevant content. And that content is administered in a linked list. So instead of building a lot of pages, which is hard-coded, you have like a database in a list where you add then the link and maybe some metadata like descriptions or the time for the duration of the content, and maybe when it's due, when you should actually to delete the course or whatever. So a lot of information you can have that, and that is then used to filter the content to the different relevant page. And then of course you can add a lot of different things like social functions and so on. So just a few things to consider. It's not only a technical solution. Of course, you need to look at the end user. You need to understand them. What are they really needing? Is it only the formal content, like how you make an effective meeting? Or would they need some tips and tricks, maybe some guidelines? Do you need to have role models showing how it's done an effective meeting? Some videos maybe? So you need to understand their needs and the actual knowledge gap within each area, if this might be for effective meetings, for example. And maybe there are other needs. Maybe they want to communicate their experiences, have a forum where they can share ideas. Maybe they want to put up agendas, document and so on. So you need to understand everything that makes this page valuable, because it's the value that's gonna determine what traffic you get on this learning portal. So then of course you need some kind of organization. This is just old pictures I'm showing you. I don't say you should have all these kind of people, but at least you need some who is the owner of this portal, who owns the content, who is responsible to understand the end users, and if it processes or anything content changes, who updates it. Should you have subject matter experts in different areas that answers questions and so on. So you have probably a few roles you need to think about for an organization, for the governance of a portal. If the portal is big, you have more limited portals like how to drive specific topics, but if you have a broad one, you need probably several roles. Something to think about is that also to come for the end users to come to your portal, you need a critical mass of content, and that content need to really be relevant to their needs, and it need to be accessible, like that it's video that you can run, or it's not that you need to log in again and so on. And it need to be instructional effective. Not maybe tons of text and so on. It should be easy to consume. People don't spend more than a couple of minutes in a video and so on. So it need to be short and effective. And often you need to gather subject matter experts together, like we call it barn building, where you make the structure of this portal and you address and try to find what kind of links should be used, and start to build that kind of a first draft of the content to build further on. And then you need to see that you have a critical mass before you release it to the end users. And then it doesn't stop here, because they are not going to use it by itself. The word is not spreading, so you probably need to do a lot before you have traffic. So of course having quality is the most important. Maybe you need ambassadors that are publishing things here, that talks about it, and maybe newsletters and other communication means to really drive the traffic. So that's something to think about. And also, if people is gonna use it, sorry for my misspelling here, it was very quickly done. It's Sunday now. The last thing is you probably have a cultural change of people actually sharing their knowledge. You know, normally you talk about 1% on a community or a group or a wiki creates content, 9% comments, but the bulk of people are just reading the content. So if you want a culture where people are not hoarding like to the right, but are more modern and are sharing like a youngster to the left, you need to work with the culture as well. So yeah, there are a few things. We're not going to go into this. I'm just saying that these are things that need to be addressed as well. So this was a very, very, very quick starter I wanted to say about behind the things. And so on tomorrow on the workshop, we're going to go through a few of these questions. But until this, have a nice time and we'll see you soon.